The metal restraints bit into Jack Stone's wrists as he regained consciousness. His head throbbed, and the sterile white room spun around him. The last thing he remembered was walking home from the gym after another late-night training session. Now he found himself strapped to a medical table, surrounded by strange equipment that hummed with an otherworldly energy. A tall figure stepped into view. Its blue-tinted skin and large, compound eyes marked it as definitely not human. "Specimen is conscious," it said in perfect English, though its mouth didn't move. "Beginning evaluation." "Where am I?" Jack demanded, testing the strength of his restraints. 10 years of military service had taught him to stay calm in bizarre situations, but this was pushing his limits. The alien ignored him, instead running a scanner over his body. Physical parameters within expected range for species. Muscle density slightly above average. Combat experience detected in neural patterns. It turned to someone Jack couldn't see. The traders were correct. "This one will serve our purposes." "What traders?" Jack's voice was steady, despite his racing heart. "What purposes?" Another alien stepped into view, this one shorter and covered in iridescent scales. "You have been selected, human, for the honor of competing in the galactic arena. Your species has long been denied membership in the Federation, deemed too primitive and violent for inclusion. However, certain parties believe you might prove entertaining." Jack processed this information, his military training kicking in. "And if I refuse?" The scaled alien made a sound like grinding metal, possibly laughter. "Refuse? You misunderstand. You were purchased legally under galactic trade laws. Your participation is not optional." "Purchased?" Jack's muscles tensed. "Humans aren't for sale." "Your local criminal organizations disagree," the first alien stated matter-of-factly. "Though I suspect they didn't know exactly what they were selling you for. The arena brings together warriors from across the galaxy. Most die in their first match, but the survivors—" It paused, its compound eyes gleaming. "The survivors become legends." As if on cue, a wall of the room became transparent, revealing a massive structure floating in space. It looked like a cross between a sports stadium and a battle fortress, with multiple domed arenas visible on its surface. Ships of various sizes and designs docked at ports all around it. "Welcome to your new home," the scaled alien said. "The greatest combat venue in known space. 10,000 species compete here. None of them human, until now." The restraints suddenly released, and Jack sat up, rubbing his wrists. His mind raced through options, looking for an angle he could use. "What's stopping me from fighting back right now?" The blue alien's expression didn't change. "The neural implant we installed while you were unconscious. Attempt violence outside the arena, and it will shut down your motor functions. Additionally, the implant will teach you the common galactic language and provide basic knowledge of your opponent's species. You'll need every advantage you can get." "Because you expect me to die," Jack stated. "Naturally. Humans are physically inferior to most spacefaring races. Your bones break easily. Your skin tears. You lack natural weapons. The betting odds against your survival are astronomical." Jack stood, testing his balance. The implant in his head tingled, and suddenly he could read the alien writing on the walls. "Then why choose a human at all?" The scaled alien moved closer. "Because, Jack Stone, some of us have studied your species. You're adaptable, unpredictable. When faced with superior opponents, humans have a fascinating habit of winning anyway. The traders who arranged your purchase believe this might make you valuable." "As entertainment," Jack said bitterly. "As a catalyst," the blue alien corrected. "The arena's hierarchy has remained unchanged for centuries. The same powerful species always dominate. Some believe this stagnation needs to end. Your presence here could spark something interesting." Jack looked out at the arena again, his mind already analyzing the structure, looking for weaknesses. If they wanted entertainment, he'd give them a show. But he'd do it his way. "When do I start?" Your first match is in 6 hours. Your opponent is a Crusher-class warrior. They're 3 times your size and can break stone with their bare hands. The scaled alien handed him a datapad. I suggest you use this time to study. You'll need every bit of knowledge you can get. As the aliens left him alone, Jack began to scroll through the information. If they thought humans were primitive, they clearly hadn't studied Earth's long history of warfare. Sometimes, being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. The roar of the crowd filled the preparation chamber as Jack checked his equipment one last time. The arena had provided him with basic protective gear, a lightweight armor vest, and reinforced boots. They'd also given him a choice of weapons, but Jack had refused them all. The aliens hadn't understood, marking it down as human stupidity. Through the chamber's force field, he could see the arena floor. It was larger than he'd expected, roughly the size of a football field, with various obstacles and terrain features scattered throughout. Raised platforms, deep pits, and what looked like power conduits created a complex battlefield. The crowd, consisting of thousands of alien species, filled the surrounding seats. Most were here to watch him die. Your opponent approaches, the blue-skinned official announced. Last chance to select a weapon. Jack shook his head. I'll work with what's in the arena. His time studying the datapad had taught him one crucial thing. Every species had patterns, even the seemingly unstoppable ones. The force field dissolved, and Jack walked out onto the arena floor. The crowd's noise changed to something like laughter when they saw him empty-handed. Then his opponent entered from the other side, and the laughter turned to cheers. The Crusher lived up to its name. Nearly 12 feet tall, with gray rock-like skin and muscles that looked like they were made of granite. Its 4 arms ended in massive fists, each one truly capable of pulverizing stone. It carried no weapons. It didn't need them. Begin. The announcement thundered through the arena in multiple languages. The Crusher charged immediately, exactly as the datapad had indicated it would. Their species always attacked head-on, relying on overwhelming force. Jack waited until the last possible moment before diving aside, rolling behind a raised platform. The Crusher's momentum carried it past him, its fist smashing into the arena wall with enough force to crack the reinforced material. Jack was already moving, sprinting toward the power conduits he'd noticed earlier. The Crusher pursued, but its massive size made it slower to turn. Each of its steps shook the arena floor. The crowd's cheering took on a confused tone as Jack continued to evade rather than fight back. Stand and fight, tiny creature. The Crusher bellowed in the Galactic common language. It smashed a platform that Jack had just vacated, sending debris flying everywhere. Jack grabbed a piece of the debris without breaking stride. If you insist. He hurled the fragment at one of the power conduits just as he passed it. The protective casing cracked, sending arcs of energy dancing across the arena floor. The Crusher stepped into the electricity, and its rock-like skin conducted it perfectly. The massive alien staggered, momentarily stunned. Jack used that moment to close the distance, something no opponent had ever done willingly with a Crusher before. The alien recovered quickly, all 4 arms swinging in devastating arcs. But Jack had studied their fighting style. Crushers never struck directly down. Their arms were too massive to manage it efficiently. He stayed inside their attack radius, too close for the powerful swings to connect. What is this? The Crusher demanded, unable to land a hit on the much smaller human who seemed to flow around its attacks like water. Jack didn't waste energy responding. Instead, he kept moving, leading the increasingly frustrated Crusher across the arena. With each dodge, he stayed close to the platforms and obstacles, forcing his opponent to smash through them. Each impact sent more debris scattering, and more importantly, forced the Crusher to use more energy. The crowd had fallen almost silent now, watching in confusion as the tiny human continued to survive. They didn't understand his strategy, but they were about to. After 5 minutes of constant attacking, the Crusher's movements began to slow. Its species had incredible strength and durability, but terrible endurance. They weren't built for extended fights. That was when Jack finally struck back. He'd spent the entire fight analyzing the Crusher's stone-like skin, looking for natural fault lines. When he found them, he used the arena itself as his weapon. A precise kick sent a sharp piece of debris into a crack near the Crusher's knee joint. The massive alien stumbled, and for the first time, the crowd heard it make a sound of pain. Jack didn't let up. He drove more debris into the natural seams of the Crusher's rock-like armor, using its own weight and momentum against it. Within moments, the mighty alien crashed to the arena floor. Its stone skin cracked, and its joints locked up. The silence in the arena was absolute. A human, using nothing but the environment and careful observation, had just defeated one of the most physically powerful species in the galaxy. The blue-skinned official's voice shook slightly as it declared Jack the winner. As medical drones rushed to tend to the fallen Crusher, Jack caught sight of his scaled alien handler in the official's box. It was furiously working on a datapad, probably adjusting the betting odds for his next fight. The message was clear. Humans might not have natural weapons or incredible strength, but they had something far more dangerous: the ability to learn, adapt, and turn any environment into an advantage. The silence of the crowd told him they were finally beginning to understand that. 3 days after his victory over the Crusher, Jack sat in his quarters studying footage of his next opponent when the door slid open. The scaled alien handler walked in, followed by a tall, elegant creature that seemed to be made of living crystal. "Your performance has attracted attention," the handler said, its scales shifting to a deep purple color. "This is Representative Bright, from the Galactic Federation Council." The crystal being's surface caught the light, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. "We have been watching you with great interest, human. Your species has petitioned for Federation membership 8 times in the last 30 years. Each time, they were denied." Jack set down his datapad. "Let me guess, we were considered too primitive." "Correct." Bright's crystal structure chimed softly as it moved closer. "But your victory has forced many to reconsider their position. The betting syndicates lost millions of credits on that fight. More importantly, you demonstrated qualities that some find concerning." "You mean I showed them that humans aren't as weak as they thought?" Jack said, keeping his voice neutral. The handler made that grinding metal laugh again. "You showed them that humans are dangerous. The Crusher should have killed you in seconds. Instead, you turned its strength against it and used the arena itself as a weapon. No other species has ever attempted such tactics. The Federation Council is now split," Bright continued. "Some see your adaptability as proof that humans are ready to join galactic society. Others see it as proof that humans must be kept isolated. Your next matches will likely determine which view prevails." Jack stood up slowly, processing this information. "So Earth's future depends on how well I fight in your arena. That seems convenient. Politics rarely align so perfectly with entertainment," Bright admitted, its crystal surface rippling. "But the opportunity exists. Your next opponent is a swarm hunter. They've already killed 23 competitors this season." The handler activated a hologram showing a creature that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a spider, but with dozens of limbs. "They're faster than Crushers, and far more intelligent. No one has lasted more than 2 minutes against them. The conservative faction in the council arranged this match," Bright explained. "They expect you to die, ending the debate about human membership. The odds against you are even higher than they were for the Crusher fight." Jack watched the hologram, noting how the swarm hunter moved. "How many credits did you bet on me this time?" The handler's scales shifted to a bright orange. "Twice as much as last time. The prizes for betting against the favorite are substantial. Your survival is worth far more than mere credits," Bright said. "The Federation is stagnating. The same powerful species have controlled policy for millennia. Some of us believe that new perspectives are needed. Humanity's adaptability, your ability to find unexpected solutions, could be valuable." Jack turned back to his datapad, pulling up more footage of the swarm hunter. So I'm not just fighting for entertainment anymore. I'm fighting for Earth's future and for political change in the Federation. Assuming you survive, the handler added helpfully. The match is tomorrow. The swarm hunter has already requested that your remains be delivered to its nest for consumption. Apparently, your victory over the Crusher made you a desirable prey item. Lovely. Jack started making notes about the swarm hunter's movement patterns. Any other good news? Bright's crystal surface darkened slightly. The arena masters have modified the environment for tomorrow's match. They've added vertical elements, walls, towers, and suspended platforms. The swarm hunter excels in three-dimensional combat. Of course they did. Jack smiled slightly. They still don't understand, do they? Humans evolved climbing trees. We're pretty good at three-dimensional thinking ourselves. The handler and Bright exchanged looks. You seem very confident for someone facing near certain death, the handler observed. Jack kept studying the footage, already forming a plan. The Crusher was stronger. This one's faster. But they all have patterns. They all have weaknesses. And most importantly, he looked up at his visitors. They all underestimate humans. That's not going to change until it's too late. As they left him to his preparations, Jack felt a familiar calm settling over him. Tomorrow wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that humanity deserved its place among the stars. And he was going to prove it in a way the galaxy would never forget. The medical drones worked quickly to patch up Jack's wounds after his victory over the swarm hunter. His ribs ached or one of its limbs had caught him, but he had won. The creature's overconfidence had been its downfall. It hadn't expected its prey to climb up and drop onto it from above. As the drones finished their work, Jack noticed something odd about their behavior. They kept scanning the same spots repeatedly, focusing on his muscle tissue and bone structure. When he tried to ask them why, they quickly finished and left the medical bay. Jack was pulling his shirt back on when he heard voices in the corridor outside. He recognized his handler's distinctive metallic tones, but the other voice was new, deep and rumbling. The data confirms it, the unknown voice said. The human's cellular structure is changing, adapting to the enhanced gravity in the arena. No species has ever shown this level of biological plasticity. Impossible, his handler replied. The gravity is 30% stronger than Earth standard. Physical adaptation would take generations in any normal species, which is exactly why the Council kept humanity quarantined. The deep voice continued. They're not just mentally adaptable. Their bodies actively respond to environmental pressures. Given enough time, they could theoretically adapt to survive anywhere. Jack moved closer to the door, listening carefully. The original assessment teams discovered this centuries ago, the voice went on. They found human settlements in deserts, tundra, mountains, and depths that would kill most species, all with minimal technology. The Council voted to isolate Earth before humans could spread through the galaxy. And now we've given one of them access to the arena, his handler said, scales clicking nervously. Where they face different species, different environments, different challenges. Exactly. Every fight makes him stronger. The medical data shows micro-improvements in muscle density, bone strength, reaction time. He's literally evolving in real time. The voices moved away, but Jack had heard enough. He went to the data terminal in his quarters and began searching through old arena records. Most were restricted, but his victory over the swarm hunter had earned him higher access privileges. The pattern emerged quickly. Every species in the arena was specialized. The Crushers had strength but poor endurance. The swarm hunters had speed and agility, but couldn't adapt to unexpected tactics. Each race was locked into its evolutionary niche. Except humans. Jack found more records, older ones. Survey teams had visited Earth multiple times over thousands of years. Each time, they found humans spreading further, surviving in more extreme environments. While other species needed technology to live outside their natural habitats, humans simply adapted. A quiet chime announced a visitor. It was bright, the crystal being's surface pulsing with unusual patterns. "You've been accessing restricted files," Bright said without preamble. "You knew," Jack replied. "You knew why Earth was really kept out of the Federation." Bright's surface rippled. "Some of us believed isolation was a mistake. The galaxy needs change. The old powers have grown too comfortable, too set in their ways. But we needed proof that humans could contribute without overwhelming other species. So you arranged my kidnapping. Put me in the arena." Jack's voice was cold. "To prove a point. To prove humanity's worth," Bright corrected. "Your next opponent is a mind-breaker. They use psychic attacks to paralyze their prey. No physical defense can stop them. Let me guess, they've never lost a match. They've never left a survivor." Bright moved closer. "The Conservative Council members believe this will end the human problem once and for all. They don't understand that by trying to eliminate you, they're proving exactly why humanity is needed." Jack turned back to the terminal, pulling up footage of mind-breaker matches. "Because we adapt. Because we find ways to survive. Because you do the impossible," Bright said. "The mind-breaker will try to reach into your mind, show you your worst fears. No species has ever resisted them." A slight smile crossed Jack's face. They've never faced a species that spent its entire history overcoming fears. That's what they don't understand about humans. We don't just adapt physically. We adapt to anything, even our own terror. As Bright left, Jack began preparing for his next fight. The galaxy had tried to keep humanity locked away, fearing their potential. Now they were about to learn why that fear was justified, but not in the way they expected. The arena fell silent as the mind-breaker entered. It moved like smoke, its dark body seeming to flow rather than walk. Its eyes glowed with an inner purple light, and the air around it shimmered with psychic energy. In the stands, even the loudest alien spectators grew quiet, their minds instinctively shrinking away from its presence. Jack stood ready, his heart steady. The handler had tried to give him protective gear, but he refused it. Against a psychic opponent, physical armor was pointless. This fight would be won or lost in the mind. "Your species is interesting," the mind-breaker's voice echoed directly in Jack's thoughts. "So much fear, so much doubt, yet you keep fighting." The match began, but neither fighter moved. The mind-breaker's eyes pulsed, and suddenly Jack wasn't in the arena anymore. He was back on Earth, watching his worst memories play out. The time his unit was ambushed. The friends he couldn't save. The nightmares that still woke him up sweating. "Give in," the mind-breaker whispered. "Accept your fear. Join the others who fell before you." But Jack had spent years facing these fears. In the darkness of night, in the quiet moments between battles, he had confronted each terror. Now, instead of fighting the visions, he accepted them. Yes, these things had happened. Yes, they were frightening. But they were also proof of survival. The mind-breaker's confidence wavered. No prey had ever remained standing this long. Usually, they fell to their knees, paralyzed by their own fears within seconds. But the human was still there, his mind bent but not breaking. "Impossible," it hissed, pushing harder. "Feel the weight of your species' fears." New visions flooded Jack's mind. Nuclear war, climate disaster, extinction. The collective nightmares of humanity rolled over him like waves. But something unexpected happened. With each terror, he also saw humanity's response. People rebuilding. Communities helping each other. Hope surviving in the darkest places. "You don't understand us at all," Jack thought back at the mind-breaker. "Humans don't break under fear. We use it." He took a step forward. The mind-breaker retreated, its smoky form rippling with confusion. Never had prey moved toward it willingly. Jack took another step, and another. With each move, he pushed back with his own thoughts, not just his memories, but humanity's shared story. The mind-breaker saw humans huddled in caves, afraid of the dark, then mastering fire. It saw them fearing the oceans, then building ships to cross them. It saw them dreading the sky, then creating wings to conquer it. Each fear had become a challenge, each terror transformed into triumph. "Stop," the mind-breaker's mental voice shook. "Your memories, they burn." But Jack didn't stop. He had learned from every fight in the arena. The Crusher taught him about using an opponent's strength against them. The Swarm Hunter showed him the importance of changing the battlefield. Now he turned the Mindbreaker's own power back on itself. The alien's psychic defenses began to crack. It had never faced a mind that accepted fear rather than fighting it, that transformed terror into determination. The purple light in its eyes flickered as Jack's memories overwhelmed its own mental attacks. The arena crowd watched in stunned silence as the two fighters stood motionless, locked in a battle none of them could see. Then the Mindbreaker's smoky form began to dissolve. Its confident posture crumbled, and it fell to its knees. "How?" it gasped, its mental voice barely a whisper. "How do you carry so much fear yet remain unbroken?" Jack looked down at his defeated opponent, his voice calm but carrying across the silent arena. "Because humans learned long ago that being afraid isn't the same as being weak. Fear shows us what we need to overcome, and we've had a lot of practice overcoming things." As the match was declared over, Jack noticed bright in the official's box, its crystal surface glowing brightly. The message was clear. He had just proved something profound about humanity. They weren't fearless. They weren't unbeatable. But they would never stop turning their fears into fuel for advancement. The silence in the arena now carried a different weight. It wasn't just respect. It was understanding, and perhaps for the first time, a touch of hope for what humanity might bring to the galaxy. The arena had changed in the days following Jack's victory over the Mindbreaker. Lower-ranked species were fighting differently, studying his tactics. Instead of relying on natural weapons, they used the environment. Instead of accepting their limitations, they looked for new ways to overcome them. The arena masters were not pleased. Their carefully maintained system of power was beginning to crack. Jack watched the screens in his quarters as another underdog fighter won an unexpected victory, using tactics similar to his own. His handler burst into the room, scales flashing between colors rapidly. "They're changing the rules. The masters. They're breaking tradition." "What do you mean?" Jack asked, though he had a feeling he knew what was coming. The handler's scales settled on a deep red. "Your final match. They're putting you against 3 champions at once. It's never been done in the arena's history." Jack turned back to the screens, studying the fighters. "Let me guess, they'd picked the 3 most physically powerful champions." "No," the handler's voice was grim. "They chose worse. The Shadow Stalker, a stealth predator that can turn invisible. The Forge Lord, a being of living metal that can reshape itself at will. And the Void Dancer, a creature that can manipulate gravity itself." The door slid open again, and Bright entered, its crystal surface almost completely dark. "The Conservative Council members are desperate. They've seen how your victories are changing things. Lower-ranked species are demanding better treatment. The old power structure is beginning to wobble. So they want to make an example of me," Jack said calmly. "Show everyone what happens when you challenge the system." "The match is in 6 hours, the handler said. "No one would blame you for forfeiting. Even surviving the first minute against these 3 would be considered impressive." Jack pulled up the data files on his opponents. The Shadow Stalker had never been hit in combat. No one could see it coming. The Forge Lord could turn its body into any weapon it imagined. The Void Dancer could make its opponents float helplessly or crush them with triple gravity. "Tell me about their personalities," he said suddenly. The handler's scales shifted to a confused blue. "Their what?" "Their personalities. Their egos. The way they think." Jack turned to face his visitors. Everyone's been so focused on their powers that they forget the most important thing. They're still thinking beings. They can still make mistakes. Bright's surface lightened slightly. The Shadow Stalker is arrogant. It plays with its prey, revealing itself just to show them how hopeless their situation is. The Forge Lord is proud of its perfect record. It's never had to use the same weapon twice. And the Void Dancer. The Void Dancer is territorial. The handler finished. It hates when other fighters enter what it considers its space in the arena. Jack nodded, a plan already forming. And how do they feel about each other? They've never fought together, Bright said. Each considers themselves the true champion of the arena. The masters are offering them each triple the normal prize money to work together against you. But they don't like each other, Jack pressed. 3 apex predators forced to share the same hunting ground. The handler's scales rippled with sudden understanding. You're not planning to fight them directly. Fighting isn't always about who's strongest, Jack said, remembering his military training. Sometimes it's about understanding what your opponents want and what they fear losing. He spent the next hours studying not just how his opponents fought, but how they thought. The Shadow Stalker's need to prove its superiority, the Forge Lord's pride in its creativity, the Void Dancer's obsession with controlling its space. 3 champions, each used to being the absolute master of their domain, each with powers far beyond human capability, each convinced of their own superiority. The masters think they're ensuring their system survives, Jack told his handler as he prepared for the match. But they just made their biggest mistake. They're so focused on physical power that they forgot something important about humans. What's that? Jack smiled slightly. We're really good at getting others to fight our battles for us. As he walked toward the arena for his final match, the crowd's roar was deafening. They thought they were about to watch a human get destroyed by 3 unstoppable champions. Instead, they were about to learn humanity's greatest trick, turning strength against itself. The arena fell silent as Jack stepped onto the battlefield. The massive space had been modified for this final match, filled with obstacles, platforms, and strange gravity wells that distorted the air around them. Perfect for 3 super-powered champions to hunt down a single human. The Shadow Stalker appeared first, its form wavering like heat over hot pavement before vanishing completely. The Forge Lord emerged next, its metallic body gleaming as it shifted and flowed like liquid mercury. Finally, the Void Dancer floated in, the space around it bending and twisting with each graceful movement. Begin. The announcement echoed through the arena. Jack didn't move. He stood completely still, eyes closed, listening. The crowd murmured in confusion. Was the human giving up? The Shadow Stalker struck first, appearing briefly behind Jack, but he had already stepped aside, letting the invisible hunter's claws slash through empty air. The Forge Lord launched a barrage of metallic spears, but Jack rolled behind a gravity well, letting the Void Dancer's field deflect them. Clever prey, the Shadow Stalker's voice purred from nowhere. But you can't dodge forever. Why would I need to? Jack asked loudly. The Forge Lord's attacks are so predictable. Anyone can see them coming. The liquid metal champion's surface rippled with anger. Predictable. I have never used the same attack twice. Really? Jack kept moving, staying just ahead of the Shadow Stalker's strikes. Looks like basic projectiles to me. Nothing creative about that. The Void Dancer's gravity control is much more impressive. The Forge Lord roared, its body transforming into a complex weapon never seen before, but its attack was interrupted by a gravity well that sent the shots flying wild. Stay out of my space, the Void Dancer hissed, warping gravity around itself. Jack smiled slightly. Champion egos were so fragile. He dodged another invisible slash, deliberately stepping into what the Void Dancer considered its territory. The Gravity Master's anger flared, creating a field that would have crushed any other opponent. But Jack had timed it perfectly. The Shadow Stalker, committed to its attack, was caught in the gravity wave instead. Its invisible form became visible as it slammed into the arena floor. How dare you interfere? The stealth hunter snarled, its camouflage flickering. The Forge Lord saw an opportunity, launching an attack at the exposed Shadow Stalker. But its metallic weapons were caught in another gravity field, twisted around, and sent back at it. "This is my arena," the Void Dancer declared. "My space, my gravity." What followed was exactly what Jack had planned for. 3 champions, each used to being supreme, each furious at being challenged. The Shadow Stalker tried to assassinate the Void Dancer, only to be caught by the Forge Lord's attacks. The Forge Lord's ever-changing weapons were turned against it by warped gravity fields. The Void Dancer's control over space was disrupted by invisible strikes and morphing metal barriers. Jack stayed on the move, using the environment to keep just ahead of the chaos. Each time the champions remembered their actual target, he would provoke them again, playing on their egos and territorial instincts. The crowd watched in stunned amazement as the 3 most powerful fighters in the arena tore into each other. The human had turned their strength, their pride, and their absolute certainty in their own superiority against them. When it was over, the Shadow Stalker lay unconscious, its camouflage permanently shorted out. The Forge Lord's liquid metal form had been frozen solid by an extreme gravity field, and the Void Dancer was pinned under a pile of its own twisted space, unable to move without crushing itself. Jack stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard but unharmed. He hadn't thrown a single punch. He hadn't needed to. The silence that fell was different from any before. It wasn't the quiet of shock, or even respect. It was the silence of understanding. The arena masters had tried to crush the human spirit with overwhelming force. Instead, they had proven exactly why humanity was ready to join the galactic community. "That's the thing about humans," Jack said into the silence, his voice carrying to every corner of the arena. "We don't need to be the strongest, or the fastest, or the most powerful. We just need to understand how things work, including people. Everything else follows from that." In the officials' box, Bright's crystal surface was glowing like a sun. The vote for Earth's Federation membership would be unanimous now. The galaxy had just learned that true strength wasn't about natural weapons or special powers. It was about adaptation, understanding, and the wisdom to know which battles to fight, and which ones to let your opponents fight for you. The arena would never be the same, and in the silence, the future of both humanity and the galaxy shifted toward something new and unexpected, just the way humans liked it.